Hello, my loves, and welcome back to a little bit of Fluffenhammer related chicanery. Today we're going to be taking a look at the middle book of John French's Ahriman series. This is Ahriman Sorcerer. Now, you may remember from Ahriman Exile that was really the establishing book. That book had to set up what the sort of backstory mythology was of Ahriman, where he was at this point in relation to the Thousand Sons, what had happened to him in the interim between the end of the Horus Heresy, the Rubric, and his exile from the planet of the Sorcerers. There was a lot of establishment that had to happen there, and also, being the first book in the series, John French really had to set out how the story was going to go, what tone he was going for, how he was going to characterize Ahriman and the ancillary characters that are around him. It was a very well done piece of work, actually. As the Warhammer 40,000 books go, as Black Library products go, it was very, very, very good. It was good for the reason that it didn't focus on action, it didn't focus on what people call the bolter porn or war porn elements that these books tend to. Rather, it went for a very in-depth introspective character study of Ahriman himself. It looks at what he's going through internally, why he does what he does, how he regards his own litany of failures and the failures of his legion, how he relates to elements at play within the Warhammer 40,000 universe. So things like how he relates to Magnus the Red, the Thousand Sons Legion as a whole, how he relates to Chaos and to Tzeentch. It's really complex. It's phenomenally complex, in fact. And this book, Ahriman Sorcerer, takes that and emphasizes it to the nth degree. Whereas in Ahriman Exile, Ahriman is down and out. He's nothing. He's no one. He's self-loathing. He's not even using his psychic powers, so he's nothing in that book. Here, he's much more established. It takes off almost directly after the end of Ahriman Exile, so he has an entire fleet of Thousand Sons, of Tzeentchian renegades, of exiles from all over the Eye of Terror. This huge fleet called the Cabal, which is just this ragtag bunch of warlords and sorcerers and other Thousand Sons, all exiles, some of which are renegade, that were once loyalist chapters, some of which are younger, some of which are older, some of them are brothers from the Thousand Sons, some of them are from other legions, and it's this sort of ragtag bunch that Ahriman is orchestrating and corralling, and they're all really interesting. Ahriman has his own sort of inner circle, most of which are Thousand Sons, and they're all really, really interesting. They all have their own little quirks and foibles and their own reasons for following him. Some of them trust him, some of them don't. Some of them kind of know where he's coming from, but they know that they are ultimately expendable, you know? Ahriman is the kind of character where he's so mercurial, he's so complex, that you never really know where you stand with him. In his mind, he is guiding you towards some unforeseen destiny that's salient to his interests. What this one establishes is that Ahriman is sort of being dragged out of his slump, out of the stupor that he's in Ahriman Exile, and he's been brought to believe that there is a way out, that there's hope in the universe, that there is a means for him to undo what he's done. So he believes that there was something flawed in the rubric, in the rendering of the rubric, in the practicing of it, and he believes that the way of getting over that, the way of undoing that flaw, is through reading, just gathering as much arcana and ephemera as possible. So at this point, he and his cabal are wandering throughout the universe, seeking the spore of sorcerers, of psychers. They're seeking out like ancient Xenos or alien museums and Athenaea, places where there are concentrations of lore. So like they're attacking ancient Eldari planets and craft worlds. They're wandering through the webway and seeking out places of interest, basically. And ultimately, Ahriman believes that he can find an answer in a place called the Athenaeum of Callimachus. Now, that's a kind of throwback to the Horus Heresy. As those of you who have read 1,000 Suns will know, Callimachus was the remembrancer who was assigned to be the personal biographer of Magnus the Red. And the Athenaeum of Callimachus is apparently like this. It's this stronghold, this storehouse of forbidden lore on Magnus the Red, the 1,000 Suns. It's all the stuff that was preserved from Prospero, basically. When Prospero burned, some of its secrets were preserved, some of them were carried out into space by members of the 1,000 Suns, and this is where they've been concentrated. Unfortunately, the Imperium, or rather the Inquisition, now holds sway over it. And that's what Ahriman is seeking out. He's trying to find a way into the Athenaeum. Also, whilst that is happening, he's being hunted. Of course, this is like thousands of years after the heresy, so the Imperium knows who he is. They're aware of his activities, and they're aware that he is becoming a power within the warp. They know that he is doing things. They can actually feel the resonance of what he's doing, like the rubric, for example, resonated throughout time and space, and actually psychers within the Imperium felt it. A lot of them were killed by it. They were murdered by it. It kind of spilled through their minds and their bodies, and it destroyed them. So they know, they're aware, and the Inquisition sends an Inquisitor after him, a character named Iabel, who's actually really cool. She's a really good character. She's kind of like an equivalent to Ahriman. She's a Psyker too, and she has her own sort of modus operandi and her own traditions, and the way those two are matched against one another is amazing. You get these wonderful moments where they are engaging with one another, not physically, but on a psychic plane. They're engaging metaphorically, even before they've met face to face. And they're having these wonderful conversations with one another about their divergent philosophies and what they're attempting to do. Ahriman is entirely non-aggressive towards her. He's not hostile towards her at all. He kind of regards her as a child in a peculiar way. He treats her as someone who is naive, someone who doesn't understand what she's doing, someone who is being conditioned. And he talks to her a lot about how he's been alive for so long and he's seen so much. He saw the Emperor. He was alive when the Emperor was around, yeah? So this sort of divine figure that she has in her head that she worships is nothing, really. It's absolutely nothing. And then there's this wonderful complexity to Ahriman in this book. French really invests Ahriman. This is something he did in the original book as well, but it really comes to a head here. He invests Ahriman with this level of complexity that catapults him beyond being just a villain. Like a lot of the Chaos characters in the literature, Ahriman is not just a monster. He's not just out for personal power or personal transcendence. What he's trying to do is actually rather difficult to discern. It seems as though he is trying to undo his mistakes. That's what he seems to proclaim to himself when he's trying to justify his actions, but the book goes to great pains to demonstrate that that's not entirely the case. Ahriman is so complex that he operates on various levels of consciousness, so there are all of these other versions of Ahriman inside of his own head that he has to engage with at particular points that are operating to different agendas, or which proclaim that you may believe that you are trying to do something noble. You may believe that you are self-sacrificing, that you're trying to save your brothers from their incorporeal states that you damned them to. But that's not necessarily the case. That's not necessarily the case at all. Ahriman has much more complex agendas than that. Ultimately, I think what he's trying to do, certainly what the book seems to suggest, is that he's trying to facilitate what the Thousand Sons originally wanted, which is a kind of mass transcendence. They want humanity to arise to a state of psychic operation whereby they can overtake the warp, whereby they can bring the gods and the warp itself to heel and use it to create a new state of creation, a new state of being where humanity doesn't mean anything, where they transcend all of the petulant evils and failures and disgraces of this reality. That's what it seems to me. He's a utopian, ultimately, in the same way that Fabius Bile is. He has agendas and intentions that make everything else, the things that seem to be malevolent or aggressive or evil, seem to be trivial. Morality doesn't really mean a great deal to Ahriman in this book, to the point whereby he's very happy to sacrifice his own people. You know, the people who are massively loyal to him, who have done nothing but serve him and believe in his agendas. He's very happy if it means that his agenda can be furthered. He's very happy to sacrifice them because by his standards, it doesn't matter. He operates on such a level whereby if he actually succeeds in attaining his agendas, not only can he restore the Thousand Sons, not only can he drag Magnus from within the clutches of Tzeentch, not only can he bring Chaos to heel, he can just restore them. He could bring them back. He can bring them back better than they ever were. He can gain mastery over all of creation. But even that isn't like, it's not like a megalomaniacal thing. It's not like he doesn't just want to be a god or anything like that for the sake of it. He wants reality to be better. He wants to free humanity and all species, all consciousness from fate, from the warp, from the manipulations of gods and demons and devils and angels. He wants to free sentient creatures from their own restrictions. And that, I mean, it's an incredible agenda in and of itself, as questionable as it is, but it lends Ahriman these various shades and complexities that make him way, way more than a villain. Something I love about this book, just like the original one, yeah, there are action sequences, but they are few and far between, and even when the action sequences are occurring, there's more happening here. There's way more happening. You get Ahriman sort of like perceiving different layers of possibility. That's the level he operates on, and manipulating reality so that bullets that would have pierced his heart and just killed him immediately fly in different directions. It's like he sidesteps into different states of possibility. He's a living Mandela effect, you know? And I love that. I think the way this book demonstrates how far beyond the Thousand Sons are from other, say, Chaos Space Marines, as it were, in terms of the way they perceive reality, the way they can manipulate time and their own perceptions to undo possibility, to rewrite possibility, is amazing. It demonstrates that they truly are, they may as well be alien. Ahriman in particular, he's so complex. The way he operates with relation to, like, Tzeentch, for example, he is marketed in the main background as being like the arch champion of Tzeentch, like the arch puppet of Tzeentch, yeah? That's simultaneously true and not. In this book, it's demonstrated that he is well aware that Tzeentch is manipulating him. He's well aware. He knows, you know, he knows what's going on. He knows that the Thousand Sons, not just the Thousand Sons, but basically all of creation is the plaything of this demonic power. That Tzeentch basically perceives the timelines and the skeins of probability for every entity that's ever existed and manipulates them, not with any plan or purpose, but because it amuses it to do so. That's basically it. And he's aware that he is just as much a puppet as anyone, but he is trying to undo that. He's trying to seek a means whereby he can transcend that status. And he kind of does. One of the things that this book draws, you actually do get moments where you see from the perspectives of either Tzeentch or Tzeentchian demons. And Ahriman is a kind of unknown entity. Yeah, Tzeentch can manipulate him, but he can't read Ahriman's fate to the same degree that he can other entities. It's like Ahriman is a truly free entity, a truly chaotic entity, and that he is outside, to a degree, the manipulations and the foresight of Tzeentch itself. And that renders him absolutely fascinating. Tzeentch loves him. Tzeentch loves him to bits because he's so interesting compared to all the other creatures in creation, including Magnus. I mean, as complex as Magnus is, he is ultimately a puppet of Tzeentch now. You know, Tzeentch basically can see everything he's going to do or intends or may do or may not do before he does, before he even conceives it. Ahriman isn't that way. Ahriman is something particular and very special, and he may yet succeed. That's another thing the book draws. He might do it. he might actually succeed in rewriting all of creation. And that is fantastic. And then again, he might fail spectacularly, as he's done many, many times before. I mean, the Inquisitor Iobel points this out to him. She says that your legacy is one of absolute failure. All you've ever done is driven yourself and your brothers deeper into damnation. And that's absolutely true. But Ahriman's kind of wry about it. It's kind of like, yeah, but there's always a first time. And there's always a chance, I love that. I love it. I love it to bits. Ahriman often spends a lot of time in his own head in this book. He's engaging with his own mystery. He is such a complex entity. He's lived for so long that he has inner depths and mysteries that he can't unravel. So he wanders through these dreamscapes and memory palaces and psychoscapes, looking at the things that have happened in his own life, the things that might have happened, the things that didn't happen, even the alternative versions of himself that haven't come to be in this particular skein of reality. And he engages with them. He tries to sort of figure out his own mystery, what he actually is inside, and how that can help him to further his own agenda, how that can help him to unpick the knots of destiny and fate that have ensnared him and his legion and the rest of creation. It's really interesting. When you read this book in conjunction with Josh Reynolds' Fabius Bile books, you really get the impression that not only are these characters way more complex than they're given credit for in the main background, they're not just villains, they're not just monsters, they're not just sadists. These guys are the ones who have some kind of ideal against the characters in the Imperium, for example, who don't have any kind of idealism at all. They just want to maintain things. They are just like, they're guttering flames in the dark. They just want to maintain things as they are in a kind of stasis, They want to maintain the dystopia of the Imperium. Whereas Ahriman and Fabius in particular, and Abaddon for that matter, even Abaddon is kind of utopian. They want to change things for better or worse, They actually want to alter reality and the state of humanity in such a way that things get better. They just happen to utilize really questionable means to get to that point. With Fabius, it's hideous eugenics, and with Ahriman, it's sorcery and occultism and witchcraft. I imagine the two would not get on if, as and when they ever meet. I don't think they'd get on very well. But it's ironic because they have very similar intentions and agendas, and that's quite common amongst the Chaos characters. I kind of love it. I kind of love the fact that they've gone this deep, that the writers have taken these characters who were just ostensibly the bad guys, the villains of the universe, and made them more. What I want to see now, because I don't think it exists yet, I want to see one about Typhus. I want to see a series about Typhus that does the same thing, that has him not as a bastard, not as a monster, not as a supervillain, but as someone who is bringing the graces of Nurgle's garden to the universe, who is showing humanity and the Xenos races the wisdom of decay, the joy of corruption and of disease and despair, the release and abandon of despair itself. I kind of want to see that. I think that would be great fun. But yeah, it's a great book. It really is. This series is my favourite. From the Black Library, this is probably the best series out there, alongside the Aaron Dembski-Bowden's Abaddon books and Josh Reynolds' Fabius Bile series. This is probably one of the best ones. It's an absolutely stunning bit of work, really well written, beautifully paced. It really works well because of the perception of time that's happening here as well. Because we're talking about a span of not just decades but centuries, you have this sort of skipping about in the perception of time and the setting of the story, and John French handles it really, really well. It's very bloody impressive, I've got to say. Really well written stuff. I am very, very, very pleased with this series. And at the moment, it seems like it's come to an end. But I sincerely hope John French comes back with a new series, maybe looking at where Ahriman is now, after the new assault on Fenris, after the re-emergence of Sorciarius from the webway. Would love to see... Oh, John, if you're listening, do it! Do it! Oh, please do it. I would be so happy to see that. But, my lovelies, until next time we're going to be taking a look at Ahriman Unchanged, which is the end of this series. Until then, my lovelies, bye-bye!
Stars.